Okay. Alderwoman Hairston told me that she cannot make it tonight because she's doing her ward night. Regards are sent, but just to let you all know that they will not be joining and do miss that they cannot join us. All right, but thank you all for joining. Please put your name and connection to Woodlawn in the chat box if you please, and that's just our way of keeping track of who's in attendance. So I'm going to share my screen with the slides for today. Okay. All right. Can you all see my slides? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So, like I said, please put your name and your connection to Woodlawn in the chat. So our goals for today is just an overview. Is DOH is working to preserve and expand affordable housing in Woodlawn. It's what we've been working on for this time, and I appreciate you all for sticking through these past few months. But today we're looking at how financial tools to protect and increase affordable housing. On our last call, we kind of talked about ways to increase units and affordable housing units as potential ways, and these are tools for that. So first, we'll hear from the Woodlawn Loan Fund, which allows for rehabilitation and new construction for rental and for sale housing that's at affordable rates. And then the other one we'll hear from is the preservation of existing affordable rentals, also known as the PEAR program, which allows us to protect current quality affordable rents through refinancing private debt for building owners. So, and here's just the overall of our agenda. We'll have a discussion session at the end. I assume there may be some questions though for our presenters, so I'll leave just like a few minutes at the end for our presenters to ask if there's like particulars for the programs. But these programs were created in the ordinance. The PEAR program is a city program that exists, but then there are some particular rules that have changed due to the Woodlawn housing ordinance for it operating in Woodlawn. And Esther Sorrell will speak through that, who's one of our assistant commissioners here at the housing department, and Jonah from CIC will speak about the Woodlawn Loan Fund, who is the administrator of that. So I will turn it over to Jonah from CIC to talk us through the Woodlawn Loan Fund. And Jonah, when you're just ready for me to hit the next slide, just say next slide, and I'll switch.
Great, thanks, Aaron. So my name is Jonah Hess. I'm with Community Investment Corporation. Thank you for having me here tonight. We're very excited to be a part of this large effort, and so I'm here today to talk about the Woodlawn Loan Fund. So I think we can go to the first slide, or the next slide. So as Aaron mentioned, the Woodlawn Loan Fund was created through the Woodlawn Housing Preservation Ordinance, which created a number of programs, both new and existing, directing into Woodlawn. And so this was one of them. And it's kind of a two-prong sort of program. It, on the one hand, is providing low-cost financing to facilitate acquisition, rehab, new construction of properties to ultimately try to preserve as well as create new affordable housing units and affordable for sale opportunities for home buyers. The second prong of this program is to provide access to capital to local developers, minority developers, developers with positive history of development in the area with inclusive hiring plans. So on the one hand, it's preserving affordability. On the other, it's providing economic opportunities for local developers and contractors. Next slide. So once we had the structure in place, what does every fund need? It needs money. So the Department of Housing sat down with a large group of banks to discuss the program and asked them to step forward and provide capital for it. 8 banks came forward with low-cost capital through program-related investments, PRIs, and grants. The fund ended up being $7 million, which was the target from the beginning. So that's exciting. It's a revolving fund, so as funds go out and come back, they'll be recycled, and that is for a period of 7 years. Next slide. And so, as I mentioned, there are 8 participating banks. So here they are. We want to thank them all. Banks can be somewhat competitive, so I will point out that this is in alphabetical order. Although a special thank you to Chase and Fifth Third, who provided some grant dollars, which helped seed a loss reserve for the fund, which is important and appreciated. Next slide.
Are any of these, where is Seaway or Self Help Bank? How come there are no community banks?
Yeah, we were not, I'm not sure. I think
nobody flagged that? Like, oh, gee, maybe we should have a community bank?
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent point. I know that a lot of the community banks have become regional banks, and regional banks have become national just because of the mergers, but it is a fair question. So moving on to an administrative fund. So this is kind of where we came in. So, we obviously have our primary business is lending. I probably should have started with that. So CIC is a lender. And so utilizing that existing platform, we were able to take in the program related investments from the banks. Taking them in that way, we will fully guarantee them. So the banks will make the investments, CIC guarantees them, and then we're able to use that capital to make the individual loans. That structure works well because it prevents a lot of the red tape or processes and having to draw down from 8 individual lenders for capital calls or things of that nature. So this is a way to streamline things, and I think it's similar to the way that we utilize our larger pool, our note pool. It's also important to point out these are construction loans, so this is not term debt. These are construction only, acquisition construction. In the case of rental housing, the term debt would come from another source to take out the Woodlawn Loan Fund loan. As I mentioned before, this is a 7-year revolving fund. So we envision that to look kind of like a 5 years of origination, and then 2 years to close out projects. Next slide. So getting kind of into the meat of it. So there's essentially 2 products that are offered under this. One is for rental housing. So this is for buildings with 5 or more units, rehab or new construction. And so right off the bat, there are income restrictions associated with it. So if you're using a loan through this fund, 50% of the rental units will be restricted at 80% AMI rents and income for a period of 10 years. The loan term, so it's 2.5%, and that's a fixed rate for the construction period. We go up to 90% loan to cost and 90% loan to value. So it's a 24-month term, and as we mentioned, so that it is construction only. So the developer or project will have to bring in term debt to pay off the construction loan. CIC, we do offer a term debt product, but it could also come from a third-party lender. Next slide. So on the other side of it, the second product is for the for sale product. So these are for buildings with 1 to 4 units, condos, again, new construction or rehab. These are intended for sale to owner occupants. So we say condos, we think about it probably more as like a condo development rather than an individual condo unit, although I guess that would qualify. But the goal here is obviously intended for sale to owner occupants at the end. So again, income restriction. property must be sold after its rehab to an owner occupant, and that owner occupant must be at or below 120% of AMI. Again, the interest rate on the construction loan is 2.5%. It's fixed. And this product goes up to, again, 90% loan to cost, not to exceed 70% of the after rehab value. It's a 12-month term. And then, so again, these are really for owner occupants. That's the goal, to rehab and sell to owner occupants. But in the event the developer rehabs the property and cannot sell it to an owner occupant after marketing for 6 months, they can request an exception to move to rental. That is, again, not the goal and would likely not be a good situation overall for the project, but there is that's the kind of safety valve option. And I think that's it. Aaron, do we want to do questions now?
Yeah, this is your last slide. So I don't know if there's any kind of questions just on how this program works, but I think we can take a few, like 5 minutes or so, to answer any particular questions you have about the Woodlawn Loan Fund. We will be discussing in larger detail around outreach and targeting this after we hear from the PEAR program. But if you have any particular questions on how this product works, how this resource works, you can ask that now.
Sure. Hey, Jonah, I'll jump in with a question real quick. The loan term is up to a 12-month term. Exactly how does that work? So they build the property, let's say it's new construction, property is constructed, and the expectation is that in the way of condos or whatever, they will sell and receive income and pay the loan back. How exactly does this work?
Right. So the idea on the for sale side, at least, would be that so it's up to a 12-month term, and if it were, say a larger condo development, we'd have to talk potentially about a longer term. But yeah, so the idea is we would fund the acquisition if needed and the construction of the either new construction or renovation of the existing building. At the end of that renovation, the developer would market it for sale to owner occupants at the correct income level. The owner occupant buys it and the proceeds pay off the loan. In the case of the condo, obviously be a series of sales that would end up paying off the loan, but it's the same principle.
And Jonah, there's a question in the chat about what is CIC. So could you kind of explain
Sure.
a little bit more detail what CIC is?
I should have started. So Community Investment Corporation. So we're a lender. We're a CDFI. So we're a nonprofit lender. We provide financing mainly for the acquisition and construction and term debt of rental apartments. So if you want to buy an apartment building and renovate it and own it in a low mod income area, we provide financing to do all of that. We also have some financing products for smaller properties, 1 to 4 unit properties, also as rental. And then I'm on the Community Initiatives Inc., which is a wholly owned subsidiary of CIC, and we provide kind of direct real estate interventions through programs like the Troubled Buildings Initiative, the Micro Market Recovery Program. We actually partnered with NHS and POA in an earlier program called Renew Woodlawn. And so that was all through my CII side. And so this is kind of a partnership internally between CII and CIC Lending to bring about this loan fund.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about the Woodlawn Loan Fund? Feel free to unmute yourself if you do have questions.
Man, I'm getting off easy, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, we'll have time after we hear about the PEAR program to go more about like how to do engagement and outreach for developers or people who may be interested in this product. So I'll move over to Esther Sorrell, Assistant Commissioner on the Asset Management Team for the Department of Housing, to talk about the preservation of the existing affordable rentals, also known as the PEAR program.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm happy to be here with you all just to talk about the PEAR program and specifically PEAR Woodlawn. The PEAR program in general was created in 2018, and it focuses on rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods in Chicago. There's 4 neighborhoods that we try to target with the PEAR program, and that's Pilsen, Little Village, Bronzeville, and Woodlawn. What's great about Woodlawn is it has its own PEAR program, so it's just the Woodlawn PEAR. And we're happy to focus just on the Woodlawn community area with this program. Aaron, can I have the next slide? So PEAR is a special financing instrument to promote neighborhood investment support and increase quality affordable housing options in the Woodlawn community. We are trying to capture existing affordable rentals. So this is not a program for new construction. We are attempting to keep affordable housing productive and ensure that it stays affordable over time. Next slide, please. What's important to note is that the maximum rent and tenant income is restricted to 50% of the area median income. We would require an affordability covenant for a minimum of 15 years, and at least 20% of the units in a program building must be covered under the program rules. So for example, if you have a 10-unit building, at least 2 of the units that are related to the program, the other 8 could be market rate. But of those 2 units, at least one of those units would have to be available to households earning no more than 50% of area median income, and the other unit would be available to households earning no more than 30% of area median income. So as you can see, we are trying to preserve deeply affordable units in an area that's rapidly gentrifying, which I think expresses our concern for preserving affordability in the Woodlawn area. May I have the next slide, please? An eligible development for the program must be in the Woodlawn community area. It could be a small multifamily building of between 6 and 25 units. Under special circumstances, we could consider a larger building, but generally buildings larger than 25 units are kind of rare in my estimation. The building must be in moderate to good condition and requiring no major renovations. The great thing is that the PEAR program can be paired with the Woodlawn Loan Fund, so that as far as going through an acquisition and a rehab, you could work with Jonah at CIC in acquisition and rehab. And then once you convert to a permanent loan, we can come in with our program and do some takeout financing or loan reduction with the Woodlawn PEAR program. Next slide, please. On this slide, we could talk about who would be eligible to apply for the program. What we're trying to reach are developers who reflect the community. So we're looking for demographic representation in the ownership, be it a single purpose entity or a community venture, that type of organization. So we're looking for Black, Brown, BIPOC developers reflected in the ownership, board membership, and staffing of the the development team. We're looking for developers that have some experience. So you have done some development work in the last 5 years. You need to have, again, some experience so that, we're looking to see if a developer has had acquisition experience, property management experience, has worked with GCs or is a GC, or can do a joint venture with the Black and Brown communities. We're looking to see that you can, qualify financially for outside financing, because the PEAR program is a takeout a loan reduction program. So you have to have the financial capability of seeing a project through to completion. And you have to have site control when you enter the program. Next slide, please. So as I stated in the last slide, we're looking for developers that represent the community. So we're looking to increase the capacity and participation from racial and ethnic minorities and community organizations serving these disadvantaged groups, and especially those that are currently serving the Woodlawn community. So as I note in the second bullet point, we are giving preference to proposals submitted by Woodlawn neighborhood developers. And we will take nonprofit, for-profit, and joint venture developers. Next slide, please.
This is your
Here's
last
our-
slide. Oh, no, it's not. You have one more slide after this. So.
Okay. This is our geographical area. As you can see, it contains the Woodlawn community area, and that contains portions of the 5th Ward and the 20th Ward. I'm not sure if down in this corner, there's a portion of the 6th Ward, but Aaron, you can correct me on that.
It's mainly the 5th. I mean, technically, I think this is like the 6th Ward, but it's mainly the 5th and 20th Ward.
Okay.
And
I think I have the how PEAR works.
Yeah.
Is the last slide. So if you could take in this slide, we do have loan terms. The term of the PEAR loan is between 15 and 30 years, and there's a 0 to 3% interest rate. If I could tell you how the loan is structured, what would happen is that we would determine the needs of the write down in order to reach the specific rent level for the units that are in the PEAR program. And then we would write down your senior debt by an amount that would allow us to reach that level. So for example, if you have a 10-unit building and you have 8 units that are market rate units, and then the other 2 are affordable units, we understand that the expenses are going to be the same for all of the units. So we need to ensure that you can meet your debt service for all of the units. So if we need to buy down a portion of your senior debt in order to reduce it to an amount that's going to be fiscally feasible for the entire development, we'll work with an applicant on that to make sure that that happens. So again, this is a loan product, but it's soft debt and it would be deferred for the long term. So I think that this is what would make it attractive to developers in the community. So that's my last slide. So I'm happy to take questions at this time, hoping that we will be able to generate some interest in this program for the Woodlawn community.
Hi there. This is Sharon Payne. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I've got a question here. it's a little troubling. It said that these um, um, loans or conditions were only good for 15 years. After the 15 years, does that mean that that the person or the entity that owns the property is allowed to take those units to market rent?
Yeah, it's possible, and it's also negotiable. So if a current owner is willing to leave the units in the program for the entire 30 years, that's great. So it's all negotiable, and and we would determine it on a case-by-case basis.
Oh, okay, but let me say this. That's kind of, we're also looking for units to stay affordable. To be only affordable for 10 years or 15 years is not going to necessarily do us a whole lot of good when you have a lot of people out here that are going to still, after 10 or 15 years, probably need help with the rents and the prices going up in this neighborhood as rapidly as it is.
Well, keep in mind that it's the loan term that's 15 to 20 years. We're perfectly fine with, if the owner is willing to do so, negotiating, permanent affordability. But the loan term itself is between 15 and 30 years. So if an owner is willing to keep the units permanently affordable in order to participate in the program, we're more than willing to do that. Yet still, any loan funds that we would extend to the property still need to be paid back within the loan term.
Yeah, but when you have, my problem is just that after 10 or 15 years, it's kind of like the dog is off the leash, and you're free to run about like they're doing now. So I have a bit of problem with that.
Well, again, we definitely are interested in developers who are amenable to offering permanent affordability. So even if the loan is repaid and the affordability remains in place, that's definitely something that we would encourage. Would you not agree?
Yes, I definitely agree that. But when you say encourage, so that still means it's still up to the individual to decide whether or not they're going to do that.
Well, correct. As we get correct, and as we get applicants into the program, we definitely would prioritize those applicants who are willing to offer the extended amount of affordability. I mean, we don't have unlimited funds. This is a very finite resources. So
right.
For developers who are willing to go the extra mile and as far as maintaining affordability, they definitely would have preference over one that wouldn't.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Portia. I'm sorry I came in a little late on the back end, but as far as you stating that you guys are looking for developers who have a little bit of experience with affordable housing and things like that. I stay in the Woodlawn area. The property that I live in has just been recently bought, but they don't live here in the community. They live out of state. So as far as getting these developers that are more a part of the community or looking to better the community, where exactly do we find those? Where do we get those from?
I think Erin is going to talk about outreach after this Q&A session. So we're definitely looking for ideas and looking for owners who are in the area. We're also looking for community organizations who are willing to step up and, take over buildings that are in the area, Right. I definitely agree with you and understand and empathize with you about developers who, buy developments in our communities and are not a part of them. I feel that they don't have the same care and attention to a developer that is from the community. So I know Erin is going to take over that discussion. And so definitely, you know, we want to bounce around ideas on how we can attract developers from the community who are willing to take on, you know, the very difficult work of acquiring properties that will remain in the community.
Right. Thank you.
That's, yeah, and that's correct. The conversation we'll have after this Q&A will be around outreach and how do we reach these developers and building owners who will want to preserve affordability, like Esther mentioned, you know, so we can preference those people and people who are local and BIPOC developers as well. Again, we can pair, we can I'm trying to use not the word pair, but we can pair these two resources together.
Combine.
Yeah, they combine these two resources together with the loan fund and the PEAR program. So, you know, I think we can be also a little creative in thinking, you know, if there's a community, you know, like Esther said, a community organization that you'd want to, you know, help, that we can, you know, advocate that, you know, they look into these programs, these two combined programs, or if there's like a developer that you know in the area, or a building owner who, you know, may need some help with renovating their building, you know, we may want to, you know, lift up the loan fund so they can do those renovations and then, you know, write down some of that debt with the PEAR program. But yeah, so are there any more questions for Esther from the PEAR program itself?
So you're talking about prioritizing folks that are whose intention is to maintain long-term affordability. Since folks are going to be applying, I'm just curious about the application process. Like how do the folks find this, and then like, are we going to be looking for those developers and bringing this to them? Since again, anybody who is local, not everybody local, will be looking to keep things affordable on the long term.
Again, we'll talk about outreach next, but let's say, for example, I'll just make up a developer, the Woodlawn Family Network, and they're interested in purchasing a building in order to maintain affordability in Woodlawn. And they are made up of community members who look like us. They have had some, you know, GC experience, property management experience, acquisition experience. They have, you know, a network that they can draw upon. And say they come to us and come to Jonah at CIC and say, hey, we've targeted a building at 63rd and Woodlawn. I'm just throwing stuff out. And we'd like to acquire this building through the program. How would that work? So they would first see Jonah for acquisition and rehab funds. If the building is $500,000, he'll lend up to 90%, which is $450,000. Let's say that building has 10 units in it. After the rehab is complete and they've converted to a permanent loan with CIC, we can come in and, you know, purchase 2 units in the program, because we can, I mean, and the 20% of the units is the floor. We would take all 10 units if the developer is willing to do so, and write down that senior mortgage to an amount where it's going to be affordable at half of the units for, you know, households that are earning 50% of area median income, and half to those households that are earning 30% of area median income. So, and each of those households will only be paying about 30% of their income toward their rent. So how much would that be? We would have to do the underwriting in order to see how much we could actually offer. Again, we have limited funds, so of course, we're going to pick the developments that best match our requirements. And then is an application process, and our multifamily application is located at the City of Chicago's website. We have staff members that would be willing to work with you and walk you through the application process. Make sure you have the capacity to complete the application and get prepared for the program. So, you know, we're willing to work with developers that are interested in the program. And when I say developers, it could be a single person, it could be a not-for-profit, it could be a consortium of individuals together, you know, as long as they meet the other requirements, you know, and we'd love to consider the application.
So just to add on to what Esther is saying, I think where, you know, if you look at these two programs, you know, individually, they can, you know, provide useful tools and good outcomes. But I think where you really get at some of the things that we're talking about here is where you layer them together, where they work together. And that's where you can truly get a lot of benefit. And it's not just, you know, with these two programs, I think there's more that will be rolling out that can be paired with these that will also be, you know, make it more impactful. So I think it's exciting to think about the different ways that they can work together. And we work, you know, at CIC, we work closely with these types of loans and with Esther and her team, so we can help walk through the PEAR process and understand the underwriting leading up to it and how it works after. So yeah, we're excited.
Yeah, and John and I have worked together for years. So, you know, we understand each other's underwriting policies and procedures, and we understand the time that it takes. And we understand that everyone might not have the same level of sophistication as, you know, big developers. So we're willing to, you know, work closely with the team to make sure that we all have positive outcomes.
So how you doing? This is Marcus. So this program, is it for only rehab construction, or is it for new development? And is it for mixed use buildings?
So as speaking only on the PEAR program, it's for rehab. So if Aaron, if you could go back to the slide where our rules are stated. No, go forward one. So here's an eligible development. It has to be in the Woodlawn community area. We're targeting smaller buildings, so not like a 50-unit building. We're targeting buildings that reflect the neighborhood, and those are usually between 6 and 25 units. And and because this is a loan takeout program, all of the rehab has to be already done. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're trying to make sure that costs are low and that we're not triggering like certain federal requirements, et cetera. So as long as we're doing like a takeout financing, that means the rehab is already done. Now, if you're acquiring a building that's already in good condition and does not require major renovations, that's fine.
So that's just the PEAR program, but CIC is something totally different?
That's correct.
You see guys combining. So with CIC, hey, Jonah, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. So with the CIC, are you guys working with new development, or is it just the same, is renovation?
So it's so on the Woodlawn Loan Fund side, which is the CIC side, it would be either new construction or renovation. We could also do mixed use as long as the majority of the revenue comes from the residential portion of the building. So 51%.
Okay.
And then Esther, would mixed use buildings be allowed for PEAR, or
Yes, that would be fine because we're buying down the rents for the dwelling units, not the commercial units. So if our normal underwriting for commercial units would still apply, but just as Jonas said, the majority of the income for the building would need to come from residential units.
Great, thank you. Any other questions about how these programs work? And if not, we can move to the engagement portion. Okay.
Well, thank you all for having me today.
Yes. Okay, so I will read these questions, but then kind of go so we can see each other for to have this conversation. So our discussion on outreach is, do you know of any buildings that meet these criteria that we'd want to preserve or highlight for these two programs? How, and then if so, how should we get the word out about these programs to the building owners or property management, companies and these local developers? And then are there specific areas that we'd want to target for these programs potentially? So yeah, how can we do this? How can we operate together to make sure we're reaching the local developers, the local building owners who are committed to affordability, who are committed to working with the community? So we really want to make sure, because the ordinance that you all helped craft does dictate that we preference these local developers, the people who have been in Woodlawn, to make sure they're spreading the wealth to those people. And the other part that the ordinance requires is that those developers have to develop these local hiring plans. So they're making sure that not only are we preferencing developers, but that they're also working with the community to make sure they can take part in these jobs that are created through these financing tools. So yeah, so let's have this conversation on, do you know any buildings that meet these criteria that we want to preserve? How should we get the word out about these programs to local developers? So I will stop sharing my screen so we can all look at each other.
So Aaron, what's the plan to share this great information with the broader community? Like, I know we have our working group and, we strategize and think it through, but it seems like we are very well on our way. So have you and the aldermen decided when we're gonna share it with others?
Oh yeah, most definitely. So I will share CIC's information about the Woodlawn Loan Fund after this. But for the most part, every program is administered by another community partner. And so we have built in engagement and marketing strategies into this. I'll let Jonah talk a little bit more about their communication plan around this loan product. And then that's also what part of the conversation that we're talking about right now is, like, how can we ensure that we're being more intentional about our strategies to make sure that we're reaching these people who really need to reach it. But Jonah, could you care to speak it to you all's marketing plan for the loan fund?
Sure. So, our idea is to start kind of hyper local. So meeting, with groups that interact with developers or know of projects. We've worked closely through Renew Woodlawn, with NHS, with POA, looking to possibly get together an advisory committee or someone else that we can work with on those programs. And so it's really outreach through the networks within Woodlawn first. That could be through local publications and making sure flyers are in everyone's offices and emails and things like that. But our thought is to start very local.
Yeah, that's great. So everybody on this call wants to help you. So if there's information you want to share with us to help you get the word out, I'm sure everybody would be happy to forward it.
That would be fantastic. We have a flyer I think Aaron will share, which has some of the basic information and try to get folks to call. I think that's where we can speak to people one-on-one. But there's a flyer, basic information. We'll have it up on our website very soon. It might already actually be up there, but that would be a great tool, I think.
There are also
Thank you.
planned press events, like releases that we would do with CIC and the city and CIC to help, that we're using our leverage as a city to get this word out after the hyper local, plan.
I have a question or
Mhm.
concern. I'm sorry, is it Ethel? Is that what was her
Esther?
name? Ethel? Esther, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no
Esther.
problem.
It's Esther.
I know she was speaking a lot on reaching out to developers who are in the community. Also more so catering to the Blacks and Browns. In the 3 years that I've lived in the Woodlawn community, I've seen new developments coming about in the neighborhood. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the area, but on 60 or Marquette Road, where the McDonald's and the gas station is, if you go down that street going west and you pass the viaduct, there's like a nice plot there where they're building these solar townhouses. They're also kind of popping up randomly in the neighborhood. So it seems to me like, somebody has already acquired to that space specifically. And I know that the PEAR program is more so for buildings that are already established and just need, updating or whatever the case may be. Living in the community as long as I've had, I don't see any Black and Brown owners that are looking to acquire more property. So I'm guessing I'm just trying to figure out exactly, do the developers live in the community, so to speak? Is that what you guys are more so targeting, or just people that already have acquired property in the neighborhood?
We're hoping for both, actually. We would definitely prioritize owners who live in the neighborhood, who have invested already in the neighborhood, who have a connection to the neighborhood that goes just beyond just investment for a financial return. I think, working with CIC, we're still developing and working with Aaron exactly, what that looks like. But yeah, I share your concern. And I think this is why, Aaron's team is going to be doing, extensive outreach so we can, draw developers that have invested in the neighborhood. Now, one good thing is I've worked for several years with an African-American developer who owns several buildings in Woodlawn. But recently he has sold them, but he did sell them to another African-American developer. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to still get those units into the program. But relaying the program has been kind of slow and difficult because this person, is really time challenged, etc. So, but we definitely, I don't think it's a lost cause. I know that there's a lot of outside investment in the community. We're fighting that same issue in South Shore and Bronzeville and Little Village and Pilsen. But the great thing is, like I said, Woodlawn has its own PEAR program that it does not have to share with any other neighborhood. So I am, committed to helping Aaron get the word out about it.
No, absolutely. I guess my main concern is, like you said, honestly, if I had to put a word for it, gentrification is coming, especially with this Obama Center that they're about to build, with the golf course that they're trying to extend. Most of the people in this area are not building owners. They don't own properties. They live here and they live on the affordable housing. And when I think of the word affordable housing, it's systematic almost to kind of plateau you at that area. There's not much room for growth. So I'm just, kind of concerned as, as far as the people who are actually living in the community, when these things do come to pass, because I do believe that they're going to come to pass, when they're displaced, these are not people who have experience with development. These are not people who have experience with rehabbing or constructing or anything like that, as far as what the program offers, in giving back to the community. I feel like it's kind of restricted, if I can say that.
That's you're making excellent points. And what we at the Department of Housing, along with, we're teaming with Bloomberg, we're teaming with Enterprise. We're hoping to actually remedy that very situation you're talking about with capacity building. So, for example, I know that there are several Woodlawn community organizations, and hopefully someone is going to be brave enough to step up and say, hey, my organization is interested in purchasing a property. What assistance can we get? Can we get some capacity building? Can we get some training? Can we get some property management training? CIC has an excellent property management training class. I've been through it myself. So there are, a number of, paths that, we can take, by we, I'm saying the community and members of the community. I mean, you all are obviously very interested in what goes on in your community. I'm hoping that you will join the effort in getting the word out about these programs, so that maybe, there will be an effort for members of the community to join together themselves and try to get some of these properties back.
So Ms. Esther, if I can jump in here, I absolutely appreciate Ms. Portia's comment on this matter. If you're a community organization or a small group that want to purchase property, you've never done it before, but you are willing to go through the training through CIC or other organizations that provide all of the training necessary, what's the likelihood that the city would invest in a first-time participant in affordable housing ownership and management?
Absolutely.
It's an excellent question. It's definitely something we would discuss with an applicant. I can't come out and tell you, or try to represent what the city can and cannot do without, a proper review of, financials, background, etc. But I think that we've been really clear in what our goal is, and that we are willing to work with, developers that are willing to, to step out and give it a try.
And I would second that from CIC side as well. We love to work with smaller developers, and when it comes to developers that are looking to do this for the first time, we always encourage partnerships to help with the areas that might be lacking. So maybe you have capital, but you don't have the management or construction experience. Maybe you have the construction experience, management experience, we don't have capital. So to try to marry those two together, to have a team that, when you look at the team, has all the parts, is very helpful. And I think it also gives experience to those first time, so that once you get past that, you will have the experience. And so you can approach it as, maybe a sole entity. But that's usually how we approach those sorts of situations.
So basically meeting with someone else to try to, whatever you're missing, I have it, and whatever you just kind of coming together.
Yeah,
is what you're proposing. Okay.
And we see a lot of partnerships like that, and frequently they work well into the future, even after each entity has its own set of experience, because everybody has specialties. And particularly when it comes to whether it's in the rental side, you have not just construction, but finance and management ongoing. And then the for sale side, it's everything from the financing, development, and then marketing and sale. And so there's a lot of specialties within each one of those areas. And so people bring different specialties to a partnership.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So I am a homeowner here in Woodlawn, and this is a question I've asked Aaron before. Not so much from the rehab end of it, but the builders, people who are working on the working group, people who are part of the quadrant teams. Are we going to be able to have a say in who the builders are? Can we participate in that process of selecting the builders?
So, well, I would say coming from a community organization side, they have to meet the city's criteria. I think that as a community participant, what I'd be more interested in is us participating in what the deliverable will be. So I don't feel that we may be able to control, since it's not our money, who is awarded a grant and who is not. However, I do feel that the community should absolutely step up and say, this is the kind of development we want. This is not the kind of development we want. This is what the facade should look like. This is what green space, how much green space we need. You know, I do think the community has a voice and should use that voice, but you know, I don't see us deciding who it is.
And before I'll turn it over to Esther and Jonah in a minute. I think that, so this is, you know, if you have now, or, you know, you can send me an email, if you have certain developers or building owners in mind that you would want us to do some targeted outreach to, like, this is the time, you know, to tell us these things, because then we can do targeted outreach and say, you know, hey, you know, it was brought to our attention that you build very high quality homes. You've been working in the Woodlawn community for years, that people of the community members enjoy the product, you know, the homes that you create. And we really think you may be interested in these products to be able to expand the work that you're doing. But I'll turn it over to Esther and Jonah, though, to speak more to this.
Sure. I was just going to piggyback on Mr. Bailey's comment in that the city, during its application process, has a requirement that a developer must reach out to the community and, you know, engage the community in a process in which the community is heard. So, you know, we're not operating in a bubble. We do have standards and requirements that still must be met, where, you know, the community is engaged and has some input into what ultimately is built in the community. Now, that's less so, of course, on already existing buildings because they're already existing. But as far as new construction, which I believe the Woodlawn Loan Fund, you know, has more of a say so over, the city requirement definitely states that the community must be engaged and their voice is heard. So I'll let Jonah answer the rest of that question. But from the city side, yes, there has to be a community engagement.
Yeah, I mean, from our side as a lender, so we kind of have the program criteria that we must operate under. And then, you know, from there, you know, in terms of individually selecting, it gets a little tricky. You know, I think what Aaron said is absolutely right. The best way to get, you know, kind of here is like choose your neighbor. It's like choose your developer in a way, you know. So if we can stay with this local outreach, if we know good developers that we can reach out to, and we're able to develop a pipeline of projects like that, that's incredible. I mean, that's what we want to do. And so I think that's the best way really to control who is coming into the pool and making these developments.
How do we gain access to things like that? Because when I moved to the community, them townhouses or solar townhouses were not there. I don't remember anybody reaching out, asking if that's something that the neighborhood wanted to see. They just kind of popped up.
I actually am not quite sure which ones you are referring to.
They're on Marquette Road, right past the viaduct. There's a liquor store. I can't recall that street right off of the viaduct. There's a liquor store there. Behind that liquor store, there's a closed down school. The school is no longer operational. And then there's a huge lot. In that lot, it's kind of gated off. They've already built at least about 5 or 6 solar townhouses there. And then
You
there's
talking about
more.
Benjamin Van Horn's Green Line?
That's what I was about to say. That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
I don't know the name of the company. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know the name of
we
who's building them, but they're there.
do. He's been developing the community for years and years. They're $600,000 or $700,000 single family homes. His name is Benjamin Van Horn, and his company is Green Line.
Green Line.
And they make these geometric shape type.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
When I first saw it, I said it looked like Dr. Seuss. That's what came to my mind when I saw the townhouse. Like they're kind of strange looking, but I'm pretty sure they're not affordable housing. I'm not 100% sure because no one's living in them as far as I know.
They're not. They're $700,000 homes, single family homes with a garage. 3 stories with a garage. That's what they are.
So you got several $1 million are affordable.
And then when I think about just the buildings that are already established here, they've been here for a while. Nothing here is really modern in the neighborhood. A lot of this stuff has been here since the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, my concern is that there aren't a lot of developers that exist that are local right now, who are on our radar, obviously, because then we'd be mentioning them. So I feel like this is going to be like a lot harder than to just name some folks. I mean, obviously it'll take some more research, and maybe we can expand the definition of local to be like Chicago, not just Woodlawn. I do like the idea of, seeing if there are organizations or people that we trust who are willing to go do these trainings and such to take on something as like becoming, I guess, a property manager, developer. I don't know if those 2 words are used interchangeably, but at the end of the day, I feel like there aren't too many existing folks that are in the neighborhood that will meet, what we hope in terms of like the affordability piece, their long-term commitment, the fact people seeing them as acceptable or efficient or like good developers right now. Obviously, that's why we have the affordable housing crisis in Woodlawn. I did ask in the chat if these like developer trainings that CIC offers, if they're available to folks prior to starting application, if like that's the way that we can start rounding in folks that are actually interested in like equipping them with the knowledge of how to take on such a responsibility to make that more realistic.
Yeah, so our property management training classes are headed up by a woman by the name of Jessica Civils, and she is actually out this month, but we'll be starting in August again, I believe, having our classes regularly, the property management training that help cover topics, individual topics about owning and developing buildings, as well as longer classes that kind of cover it all. But I will say, I mean, just aside from those, we would love to talk to anyone that's interested, about just the process. So we are always trying to talk to new developers. The vast majority of our clients are small and medium-sized developers. So that really is who we serve. So we would love to talk to anyone. I think, in terms of the prioritization access, your point about, expanding beyond Woodlawn, I think, we were thinking about it along those lines. So, prioritizing developers within Woodlawn, and then outside of Woodlawn within Chicago, minority developers within Chicago. And then even if needed, expanding beyond that to, folks that have developed in Woodlawn, they themselves might not be minorities, but are committed to hiring locally and have a plan to do such. So if you think of like a tiered approach, trying to do that, but starting local.
Do we have to submit an application to obtain the, get into the classes, or that's something we can do without the application?
Oh, no, you could just do that now. You could just do that. I mean,
Okay.
if you're just interested about learning what,
Property management and things like
yeah.
that.
So
Okay.
if you go onto our website, there's a link for property management training. You'll see the schedule of upcoming classes.
And I'll be sure to send that link out with the flyer about the loan fund and the recording of this meeting. I also wonder, I guess, as you all think about this, if there are local organization and how there's a conversation about partnerships, if there's a local, organization to Woodlawn that you think would be great at, doing some of these things, but, we can think about how they may be able to partner with, other developers across the city, so that they are gaining this experience, as well. So I think we can actually get creative. So it seems like it's, a little difficult right now because it's, kind of in short supply of local developers. But I think if we're thinking creatively, and as we mentioned, layering these tools and products, we can, help build the infrastructure, so that we're creating developers and organizations locally who really are seeing the need for a continued affordable housing for the long run, and building local capacity.
May I jump in and ask a question? And I apologize. This is Naomi at Blacks and Green. I apologize for dialing in late and then asking a fundamental question, but have you covered upfront equity, capital, down payment money, access to that, sources for that? Because I mean, I know that really a good education, getting started and understanding the development process is fundamental. It's important. And, CIC has been doing a great job at that for a lot of years, et cetera. But I just want to make sure for folks who haven't done development or are interested in it, that they recognize that all the classes in the world are not going to get you a development if you don't have money up front to get your project started, unless, as I'm asking, there is an offer of upfront equity as part of the program that's being discussed tonight.
So first of all, thank you, Naomi. We appreciate that. So there is an equity requirement on the rental side. It is the 10%. So we go 90% loan to cost. Similarly, on the single family side, we go up to 70% loan to value, 90% loan to cost.
You're talking about lending? You're talking about mortgages?
Yeah, so under the Woodlawn Loan Fund, there's criteria for the two products. So there's the rental and then there's the for sale. Each do have an equity requirement.
Yeah, but that's the ring pass knot, y'all. And if you don't, so I know Chase is in the community now with community banking and blah blah blah. But I just, for Blacks and Green, for example, has an affordable housing product, Houses Garden, gorgeous, net zero, all the amenity, designed for the Black middle income purse. And we're actually in the process of securing some upfront capital. Mm-hmm. But it's been a lot of years of circling the drain in terms of, I've got a great idea, I've got a trusted community brand, I care about my neighbors, I got skin in the game, blah, blah, blah. But none of that is ever going to equate to upfront capital. And if you don't have it, you're not doing nothing. You're not doing no projects with nobody. And I just want to make sure that people understand that with all the love in my heart, because, you know, I'm just right down here with everybody else. But you got to have that upfront capital, and there's no substitute for it that I know of, unless y'all are handing out money, and that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think, you know, we see equity as one of, as you're describing, it is the hardest, sometimes the hardest thing to obtain.
It is always the hardest thing to obtain.
Yeah, and I know that there are funds that are coming about that are setting up to address the equity, or it's the inequity.
That's what people need to know about. Where's that money coming from for upfront capital? Because that's the ring pass knot.
Right. No, we hear you. I think, you know, as things evolve in that space, you know, we are not currently in that space right now, the equity space, but that is, it's, you know, it's the inequity of equity is always it's the hardest thing. It really is. I hear you.
Well, if we're going to increase ownership in our own community, I think Naomi is making a very good point. You know, we need to address this issue and stop talking about it. There needs to be some real program push to help with increasing ownership in our community.
I mean, it's something that, you know, we've been working on at the city, but you're correct. You know, like I said earlier in the discussion, we've been working with Enterprise. We've been working with the Bloomberg Foundation to, you know, think tank ideas on how we can help bridge this gap. But as Naomi said, this is a very slow process. Everyone is still looking to find alternatives, and, you know, our alternatives are very hard to find. So I acknowledge your concerns. And all I can say is right now is while we're working on it, I don't have an answer right yet.
To kind of piggyback off what Naomi said, you know, acquiring equity, being able to have that cash up front and things like that. I guess my question is, what time frame are you guys really giving this to kind of pull in developers and get the ball rolling on this? I mean, when COVID hit, people lost their jobs, they couldn't pay their rent, which ultimately meant that the owners of—
Oh, Portia, you got muted.
Okay, I'm sorry. The owners of the property lost money because, you know, the tenants were not paying their rent. Ultimately, the tenants were either displaced or they were allowed to stay there, you know, for however long. But you know, with COVID coming the way it did and it hitting the economy the way it did, you know, I guess my question is, like, how are we supposed to reach out to these people to get the developers to come in to actually acquire the property with everybody pretty much losing over the past 2 years? Everybody's been affected by it financially.
Fortunately, on our side, the funds that the city has dedicated to this program have already been earmarked and set aside for the program. And, you know, we're not sunsetting the program. You know, we definitely want this program to survive and thrive. So, so far we have not put a time limit on it. We're just getting started, which is why we are focusing on outreach right now. And we hope to continue to develop and grow and hopefully obtain even more funds to get into the program. So I don't think worrying about a sunset is, you know, a major concern right now. We're just getting started.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think I had mentioned it's a seven-year fund for the Woodlawn Loan Fund, the, you know, low interest loans. I think we talked about it being a 5-year origination, but, you know, depending on how it goes, it could go into 6 years. with the closeout. So it will be here for a while.
And I think I know there's interest around the loan fund already, the Woodlawn Loan Fund already. So I don't know if that's going to be a difficult product for us to, I don't think that will be a difficult product for us to launch, because it also is in exchange for the affordability. These developers are getting, you know, a lower than market rate interest rate.
Erin, may I just ask, in terms of the interest rate, we know that organizations like Chicago Community Loan Fund and now JP Morgan Chase has got, you know, their community funds, and then you have yours. Can you contrast and compare the interest rates and the other key terms between, you know, like those three standard bearers or others that I may not be aware of? Like, can you just lay those terms out, like interest rate, term, loan to value, just like a little chart?
Terminology, so to speak, if you could just go over that.
So I can speak to that from just the comparison of the Woodlawn Loan Fund to the standard CIC product. And I think, I mean, the first thing that's important is to make sure the comparison is a construction loan to a construction loan, because you will see a lot of very low interest loans out there, but they're generally term debt. So it's once the building is stabilized, you can bring in that type of, so if you looked at our standard construction loan right now, I think it's anywhere from about 5.5% to 6.5% interest. So this would be 2.5%. If you go to our permanent debt, so the financing that you would bring in once a building is stabilized, if it's rental, our term debt on a 3-year fixed mortgage is 3.5%, and 5-year fixed is 4%. So you see the permanent debt interest rates are much lower, but in our experience, the interest rates on construction debt is like very competitive. And if you look at the rates in the 1 to 4 space, so if you're building a house or rehabbing a house for sale speculatively, those interest rates can easily get into the teens. And so that also is I think actually where there's a huge benefit there on the single family side.
But Jonah, were you saying that your mortgages are 3-year mortgages and 5-year mortgages?
So they're 3-year fixed. So it's an adjustable rate mortgage. So it's a 3-year arm and a 5-year arm. So it's fixed for the first 3 years, and then it floats based on prime. And so.
But is it a 20-year mortgage or?
So it's a 10-year term. So it's fixed for 3 or 5 years, and then the term is 10 years. The amortization is between 25 and 30 years. So
So when you're saying it's fixed, so you're saying the mortgages stay at one rate for the first 3 or 4 years, and then after that, the mortgage rate, their percentage can actually go up, and that'll be based on the development that's really within the community or around that particular house, right?
No, it's based on the interest rates, the prime interest rate. So it's a fixed interest rate. We base it on LIBOR. So there's just different indexes that you can tie it to that have prime rates, and that's usually, it's common that adjustable rate mortgages are pegged to those indexes.
Well, I think it would be super helpful to some of us if us like Aaron or I haven't met Esther before, but if someone could create a chart, a contrasted compared chart for construction lending versus takeout or permanent lending, so that the educated consumer, as they say, is armed with the negotiating skill to get the best deal. And I think that's one product out there that I have not seen, that chart. There's maybe maybe 5 or 6 key lenders that are most relevant to the Woodlawn situation. Is that something that the city can provide us with?
We can do some research of develop like CCLF that we've worked with before. I don't know how inclusive it could be. It's not something that we normally do, but for the purposes of this program, sure, we can take a look.
Yeah, I mean,
That'd be great.
Are you thinking just like a market comparisons of products, or just kind of basic structure?
I'm just talking about for me, I'm a visual learner, so I'm looking at a chart. I want to contrast and compare. Maybe I have 6 lenders. They have construction loans, they have takeout loans. What's their interest rate? What's their term? You talked about the ARM. What's their ARM? What are other, what is their loan? What loan to value do they require? Like just basic consumer education in terms of those folks in the neighborhood who want to be developers, who are learning by doing. This is I would consider that to be a valuable tool to have. That comparison chart.
Trying to think if that exists out there. I mean, we could certainly do that for our various loan products.
I think that'll be, so I'm also aware that we are almost out of time and it is 7:30 and I'm pretty sure people would like to get back to the rest of their evening. So I guess, Jonah, if you have that for your various products, that would be helpful. And then like Esther, I can connect with Esther for just seeing what we can provide from the city. I will also send out the link to the CIC training and the and some information, that we've talked about today. I'll follow up with that also with the recording of this meeting. But I appreciate you all being here and providing this input. I think it just requires us to think more mindfully about how we're going to build the capacity of the local area for people who may be interested in getting into development, who are current Woodlawn residents or organizations that are active in this space in Woodlawn that would like to get further, maybe acquire a building. But I do appreciate you all taking time out of your evening. Our next working group meeting will be the 17th of August. I did send out the meeting invite for that already, so hope you can have that on your calendar. We'll also have, we'll dig deeper into data during that meeting. But I appreciate you all taking the time out this evening, and I will send that information out by the end of the week. But thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Erin,
Good night.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to ask a question before we close out. If people wanted to leave, that's fine. I came in a little bit late, so I wanted to know if it was in the beginning mentioned anything about the 52 lots proposal.
No, I did not mention that. So what we will do is DPD and DOH will be meeting, is trying to schedule a meeting with the Alderwoman's office to think just more holistically about this process. What's coming up is I feel like that we need to be thinking about not only about these reserve lots, but the process that happens after that. So the visioning with the community, the RFPs for these lots. So more information to come on that soon after we have that larger meeting between our DPD, DOH, and the Alderwoman's office.
Okay, would that be brought into this space like within the next meeting, or how would we decide about
It
that?
will depend on how quickly we can get that meeting scheduled between all of us, but I will be sure to let you all know updates as things progress.
I'm sorry, really quickly. The CIC, would they be the 52 lots that Savannah mentioned? Would the CIC be a better program for that as opposed to PEAR?
I mean, it's purely up to the developers if they'd want. I mean, they could potentially they could use the CIC loan fund for the development on those lands. But
Right, because I know she said earlier that the PEAR was more so for rehabbing. So that's why I was asking.
Right,
if
PEAR is
CIC would be
for
a
rehab.
better option.
right, so that would be a potential. I mean, that's how these kind of programs can stack with each other. You know, that would have these lots or these other, you know, interested partners, and that they could use this fund to build on there. There's the affordability requirements that the lots would have, and then there's also affordability requirements that are added on with the use of the loan fund product. So it is a very real potential, and I think it's an attractive way to think about this as how do these programs in the ordinance layer together to get the outcomes that we want, and how can we serve the, you know, the lower AMI levels by stacking and combining these products.
Are the 52 lots for single family?
No, those are for rental.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Good evening. This is Michelle Williams. Will you kindly put me in the email listing? I've put my number and my email in there every time we've had a meeting, and I still don't get any emails from you.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. I will be sure to check that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And this is Charles Gill. Me too, Aaron.
Okay. Thank you all.